Hello, if you're here for optimizing your content for generative AI search, you're in the right place. My name is Scott Abel, and I'll be the host of today's show. A few things about our webinar platform. We don't have access to your camera or your microphone, which means during today's broadcast, we can't see or hear you. We are recording this show as we do with all of our Content Wrangler webinar programs, and you can use the same URL you're using to watch the live show to watch a recording on demand. You can also share the link that's in your webinar URL panel up at the top of your web browser with anybody else you'd like to watch the show, and they can access the recording afterwards. Thanks for doing that in advance. Also, we want to hear from you. This is a big topic and you probably got questions, so we'd like you to submit them anytime during the show. You can do so by scrolling down beneath your webinar viewing panel to the Ask a Questions tab. That tab will allow you to submit a question. Those will come into a queue that I monitor, and I'll try to get as many answers as possible with the time that we have for questions and answers after our presenter's presentation today. Also, there's additional content in the attachment section, which is located beneath your webinar viewing panel. Throughout the show, our presenter may mention some assets that are available beneath your webinar viewing area. Scrolling down a little bit to see the list of those assets. Some of them have a short description and a link to some external content. You can click on those at any time during the show. You won't lose your place in the show or anything. It'll just open a new web browser, a little window for you so that you can check out that content. There's also some information from the sponsors of today's show that you can find in the attachment section as well. We're going to launch 2 polls today. The first one we're launching right now. It's super easy to take a poll. 1 question, 5 multiple choice answers. You select the answer that's best for you. And the first question today is, where are you on your journey to create semantically rich, structured content? And your choices are, we've been creating it for a while and we're pros who can teach others. Or, we're relatively new to creating semantically rich, structured content and are looking to learn some more. Or, we're considering adopting semantically rich, structured content and determining whether it's a good fit for our organization. Or, we're learning about it just to learn because we like to learn. Or, I don't know, or another choice will be sufficient there. Participating in this poll helps the presenter understand a little bit about where you are in relationship to today's topic and allows him to customize his talking points to who is on the show today. So definitely do participate, and I'll let you know when there's another poll available. You'll see a message on your screen as well. At the end of the show, I'll ask you to provide a rating and some feedback on the quality of the information that we provided you today using our 1 through 5-star rating system, in which 1 is a low rating and 5 is an exceptional one. There's a little field into which you can type some text-based feedback, and I encourage you to do so. I share that with the presenter at the end of the show so that they can hear from you directly. Hey, and speaking of hearing from you directly, I would love to see you October the 5th through the 8th in Atlanta, Georgia for LavaCon, the Content Strategy and Technical Communication Management annual event that attracts about 400 or so technical communicators and information developers to join together each year. We have a great multi-track conference with hot topics, lessons learned, best practices, and case studies that you're definitely going to want to learn more about, especially relating to the hot topics of AI and structured content. You can save 10% off the cost of registration when you use our discount code TCW at checkout. You can learn more about LavaCon at lavacon.org. That's lavacon.org. And a special thanks to Hereto, the AI-enabled component content management system platform that's in use around the world to deploy documentation and developer portals that delight customers. They're our sponsor of the entire series of Content Wrangler webinars, and we'd like to thank them and hear from one of their customers right now.
When we were, looking for a CCMS, we were trying to find the right one, and we were coming from an unstructured wiki environment. At the time, it seemed like that was everything that we needed. But after we saw what Hereto could do, we were very excited. After moving into Hereto, I could very quickly see the benefits. Content was actually organized in an understandable way. I was able to find what I needed when I needed it. With structured authoring, it's almost like a template. So it's really easy to see what information is needed in what area. So anybody could jump in and enter the content that they need in the right place, and the writer can come in later and polish it up, get it ready for publishing. It was a big transition, but in the end, it was totally worth it.
All right. And with that in mind, welcome to the show. My name is Scott Abel. I will be the host today. And with me is my guest, Andrea. Andrea, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Beautifully.
Awesome. Great. This is the first step toward a good webinar today. So I'm happy about that. Where are you broadcasting from today?
I'm in New York at the Knowledge Graph Conference, which is taking place this week. A great gathering for semantic enthusiasts like me. And I'm happy to get started.
Excellent. Hey, let me tell you one thing before you do. So far, the audience members have answered our polling question, and the number one answer is 41% of the audience so far who's participated in the survey say that they're relatively new to creating semantically rich structured content, but they're looking to learn more. 20% are considering adoption. 9% say they are experts, they're pros at doing it, and then 20% are learning. So you've got a varied audience there to educate. I'll let you share your screen again, deliver your presentation. I'll be in the background helping the audience members and fielding questions for you.
That's great. Thanks. Yes, so let's get started. We have a lot of content. Last week, I also had the pleasure of attending the SEO week also here in New York. And a lot has been dedicated to generative AI search. So starting point is really, considering what we can call agentic experience. The fact that your next customers could be an agent and maybe, isn't human. I have started to work in our research activities on a prototype of a potential shopping assistant that I call Sarah. That I'm using to study and analyze, how the content needs to be organized when the client is not a human being, but is actually a reasoning model like the one used by this prototype. And of course, Sarah is not alone. I mean, everyone of us, it's now moving between the different AIs that we've made available, whether it's a Gemini Pro or ChatGPT or Copilot or Meta AI that it's coming more and more into the scene, or new players like Perplexity or U.com, or existing players like Amazon with their Rufus shopping app. So there is a variety of agents, and these are just a few that are starting to mediate and to become, and they are becoming the new gatekeepers. So this is a kind of a number to put things into perspective. We are talking about 1 trillion, at least 1 trillion of potential annual global e-commerce purchases that can be driven by these AI agents. And so we have to start focusing on what is the agentic experience and how close we are to this point. This has just happened a few days ago on our website, and just to give you an idea that this thing is quite concrete. So someone came on the live chat and asked. I was using Perplexity AI to look at my website, and then he recommended me to use WordLift to enhance. But I don't know, how and what my website, blah blah blah. So we got a client that was coming into the website after dealing with Perplexity, that apparently recommended to use our tool for optimizing the content. I'm Andrea Volpini. I am working on between search engine optimization and symbolic AI. I am luckily among the best SEO in the world, so I very much focus on creating content and optimizing content using data and semantic enrichment. WordLift is a company that creates knowledge graphs for helping small, medium organization as well as large corporate organization across the world on different verticals, from news and media to e-commerce, and we are gearing up for this new evolution. These are my contacts, so that you can keep them with you, and then we can keep the conversation going. So let's start with the so-called poker paradox. This is a way of understanding more about things that are changing in the existing ecosystem. Imagine, who won between a computer that has been trained on over 1 trillion hands of poker, a handful of expert human players that would take a relatively large amount of time before playing their game, and they've seen, a reasonable amount of maybe a few millions of hands. Who do you think won, Scott? What do you think? Human or computer?
I think the computer.
Right. I mean, it's 2025, and computer has won chess many years ago with Deep Blue, and then of course Go has been demonstrated by DeepMind with the importance of reinforcement learning. But reality is that the human won. Why the human one? And that was really the beginning of a new wave in how large language model are built. And this brings us a little bit into cognitive science. We as human have system one and system two thinking, and a large language model, a base model, I should say, is traditionally constructed as system one. So it processes large amount of data and provides, responses at the speed of light, like 10 milliseconds decisions. And it's primarily based, as we know, in pattern matching. Whether in system two thinkings, we take time, right? As human, for example, when we learn how to ride a bicycle, we use system two thinkings. We take the time to understand the context, to learn how to bike, and then of course, the experience that we create while learning how to bike, then it's transferred to system two. System one thinking, meaning that then it becomes for us natural to ride the bicycle, and of course we can very quickly take decision while riding a bicycle. So in 2015, OpenAI started to understand an important piece of information, not only the fact that there's not enough data on the web to keep evolving the systems. I mean, we only have one internet. And as Ilya Saxfer here told us a few months ago, we have scaled already training to learn as much as it was possible from the existing open web. And so there is no room for further improvement in terms of pre-training. So what OpenAI realized with the Poker paradox was that it was actually possible to let this model think harder in order to achieve similar results that could have been achieved by adding 100,000 of additional samples in the training data sets. So that's very interesting because that's a revelation, right? That means that we can make this system think harder by giving them the time to reason. And by doing that, we can, of course, combine system one and system two thinking, and therefore, of course, the machine will eventually be able to win the poker battle. But an LLM, like a base model, like the GPT models, wouldn't be able to achieve the system two thinking without the specific training that is required for creating a reasoning model. Now, this has been revealed and made more accessible exactly 106 days ago when DeepSeek opened their laboratory and released DeepSeek R1. So DeepSeek R1 is a reasoning model very much similar to the O series of OpenAI. But DeepSeek released everything open source, and so it was for me a personal revelation, as for many, because we started to read through the paper and we started to realize that the way in which the reasoning model was trained using reinforcement learning made the model understand how to think about the solution of a problem. And that's, extremely different from the traditional supervised fine-tuning, where the model is trained to provide the correct answer. In the DeepSeek training methodology, we learned how reinforcement learning can be used for practically teaching the model to reason about before providing the correct answer. And so I started to replicate, as many of the other AI practitioners, what it was written in the paper. And well, I'll tell you the rest of the story in the coming slides. But what is important to understand is that so we have this base model that are primarily well at pattern matching, right? If you like, an advanced form of autocomplete. However, the way in which the context is created makes this model extremely versatile. Now, using reinforcement learning in the training, we can teach them, through practice, like we would do with child in school. We can teach them, not only how to respond, but how to think before responding. And so you can imagine that if we combine, this ability to reason and tooling like, accessing the open web with traditional search, we create new form of intelligence. So here I have created a quick prototype for you to play, and we can share the deck, and you will have a link to a notebook where, by hitting play on the cell, you will be able to test exactly what happens in search when we start combining, a language model that is capable of reasoning with the tool that searches the web. And so here, I have made a query. Find me the best shoes for marathon running. I'm male, 48 years old. I need neutral shoes. And then you can see the different responses coming from the different models. So a model that doesn't use reasoning, like GPT-4o, will give you some answers and will, provide, for example, visibility to the Brooks Hyperion marks. Whether a model that, like DeepSeek V3 or DeepSeek Air 1, that has reasoning enabled, will think harder and will, prioritize some brands. And of course, there are overlap, but the results are not the same. And so we start to realize that, there's no point, for example, in talking about rankings. We can also start looking at search in a completely different way, because search is becoming part of a broader experience. What I'm saying here is that traditional search, which is still, dominant in today's marketing practice, it's going to become a niche, because it's going to become a function of AI intelligence. Search as a tool, it's making the system smarter, but search as an entry point for a brand, it's going to become a niche market in the coming months and years, because much like it happened with the radio and the television. AI, it's becoming the new gatekeeper. It's becoming the new interface. And so brands, in order to preserve their value and their ability to reach their targets, need to build this semantic layer that enables AI discovery. And we'll try to get more practical into these, of course, as we advance with this presentation. So how has search evolved, and what is happening in search? For sure, we see, and this is a contribution from Ren Fishking, as well as the team at Stratos that has been running for now a few years, this broad analysis on the user behaviors. So one aspect is that, of course, there is an increase on zero-click searches, an increase on queries that people go on Google to make that result in no clicks. Okay, so there are no clicks coming back to the open web. And why there are no clicks? Well, there are different reasons why there are no clicks, but one of the reasons is that, of course, the SERP is becoming richer and is becoming conversational, and therefore capable of providing the response that the user is searching when making the query, diminishing the value of the clicks. Now, the other important metric is that by looking at these broad range of Google searches, it appears that almost 50% of all these searches are branded, right? So people go and search for WordLift. People go and search for Ereto. People go and search for Nike. So that means a lot, because that means that the work that you do for empowering your brand, it's extremely needed at this point. If you are, seeing diminishing clicks on search, that is not the issue. That is really part of the trend. But if you see that on your branded query you are going down on impression or demand, well, then you have a serious problem, because the new search requires very powerful branding. Now, we need to change metrics, right? We say clicks are no longer a reasonable way to measure success. Clicks used to correlate very well with revenues. They no longer do in most cases. So again, for example, in our specific case, as a tech AI company working, offering a SaaS, the correlation with revenues is really with branded searches. It's no longer with organic clicks. It's with branded searches. AI reference rate, how long the brand is cited among the responses of the Perplexity and the different LLMs, and of course Google AI overview, first and foremost, it's becoming more important. The persistence into the memory layer of these systems, it's becoming pivotal in order to strengthen the brand visibility and reach. The ability of the agent that are working as intermediary, as gatekeepers, to bring conversion, to bring someone like, the guy that wrote to our website. I asked Perplexity, what should I do from my website? And he indicated that I should come to WordLift. And he didn't know WordLift before. So we want to start measuring, the quality of the leads that are coming from these systems. And we want to start tracking these into our, Google Analytics or Adobe, whatever platform you're using. So there are new success metrics that we need to start shaping. Now, of course, it's not that the world has changed all of a sudden. Search still remains, the biggest driver of clicks. So if your business model it's still driven by clicks and not by direct conversion, or clicks is still an important metrics. Well, I mean, still 90%, 93% of the global search market is still dominated by Google. And if you are looking for the clicks, there's no better way than Google. The problem is that the quality of the clicks that you are getting from Google is not the same quality that you used to get from Google a few years back. And of course, there are other players. Of course, we have to start thinking in a more holistic way. Of course, there is an extreme value in working with DuckDuckGo, in feeding your product into Bing Merchant Center. Do you know Bing as a merchant center? You can feed your products into Bing Merchant Center, and Bing, it's primarily used by AI system like ChatGPT as a web index. When the LLM needs a context, it will make a search, and that search is most probably going to hit Bing. And so you want to use Bing technology like Bing Index Now to make sure that Bing is properly indexing your property. You want to start looking at, what queries are coming from these LLMs and what pages are being hit by, the different chatbot. And yes, I will have a slide also for that to make things more practical and actionable. But let's remain still on the strategy level. So AI, it's designed to trigger multiple search at once, right? And as I demonstrated in the previous example, and you can also run the demo that I created for you, the reasoning model generates queries that potentially can fulfill the user need. So what used to be a messy middle, like customer journey, now it's going at the speed of light, because there is an AI in the middle that it's actually triggering the search on behalf of the user. That means that the customer journey is going faster, and that it's broader, and that it means that you have to cover the customer journey at best with your semantic and structured content. This is also because while it is true that you are going to see less clicks coming from AI platform and search in general, The reality is that if you've done a good job, you will start seeing that these clicks have higher engagement and potentially higher conversion rate. And so you want to start changing the metrics and start looking at, the return of the investment, the ROI, the business value of this conversion, because the monetary value of clicks from AI platform, it's going to be higher, and it is higher. I mean, that's what we're seeing already from our clients, ourselves, and the industry in general. So there is hope, right? And as long as we we understand exactly, this evolving scenario, we started with keywords. We started to optimize, the customer journey by thinking in terms of what is the keyword that my potential prospect would use on Google to find services that I can offer. That was the era of Wikipedia, right? That was the era of text matching and traditional information retrieval. Then we evolved into entities, right? We started to think no longer in terms of keywords, but in terms of concepts. And concepts are, still pivotal in today's web, because they provide this model with some level of structure that can guide the next era, the neural era, where features inside a language model become prominent in guiding what? The customer journey. I need to influence the models and search, that is a function of intelligence of this model, in order to entice my user to come to my property within a certain customer journey. And so we're moving from entities to features, but we are moving more realistically from concepts to customer journeys. We need to think in terms of journey. We need to organize our content in terms of target personas and how the target personas will hit, our content across the different platforms, whether it's TikTok or YouTube or a website. We have to be very, very careful in looking at how this model functions. And we need ontologies more than ever. And ontology used to be a bad word a few years ago. I mean, I stopped mentioning ontology. Of course, now I'm at the Knowledge Graph conference, so I will be very fiercely defend the value of ontology. But this is also at the strategic level. It's what you can really do, right? Because ontology are a way in which we can shape the memory that an AI system needs in order to fulfill its goal. And this is a practical example that I presented yesterday in a long seminar at the Knowledge Graph conference. So our team started to work on training a reasoning model. Okay, a reasoning model, it's a model that would think before providing an answer, just like DeepSeek R1 or the O series from OpenAI. But what is interesting here, that I was able to train a system on Gemma 3, that is an open source model provided by Google, with only 4 billion parameters. Imagine that GPT-4o has over 1 trillion parameters. So with a high parameter efficiency, I was able to create a model that we will see now the results. It's almost capable of doing what GPT-4o does, only using an ontology. And that's extraordinary, because that means that the structure of the data is not helpful for shaping the external world, but it can be also used internally to create models that think like you, that act like your organization expect you to act, and with minimal data requirements. I didn't have to scrape the web. Of course, I use a base model. I use a pre-trained model that, of course, scraped the entire web. But in order for me to create an expert in SEO that reasoned like I wanted to reason, I needed only 1,000 samples and an ontology. That's all. And I didn't even add to create these 1,000 samples, because I used the ontology and another teacher model to generate this data. And guess what? I was able to present that this reasoning model reached a 92% of GPT-4o capabilities with just 1,000 a fraction of the parameters and a fraction of the complexity. And it's open source, and I can run it on my own architecture, and I don't need to scrape the web, right? I can only provide it with an ontology. And that's pretty fantastic news for all of us today, because that means that, well, the core, the ontological core that each organization has a tremendous value in shaping the future of AI. Now let's get practical, right? Okay, Andy, you talk a little bit about you talk a lot about the theory. You prove that yes, an ontology can even create a reasoning model, but where do we start? Well, I'm going to give you a great news. I'll give you great news. We publish knowledge graphs on the linked data web. We've been doing this for years. We have a beautiful knowledge graph of the content wrangler, for that matter. May 3rd, 3 days ago, we start to see that GPT bot is not only crawling the website, but it's also crawling the knowledge graph behind the website. And here we see two of our clients, the Global News Graph by Ippen Digital, premium, one of the largest publisher in Germany for local news, amazing team, amazing content, and the Next Web, one of our historical clients. So now, because you might not be familiar, but GPT bot is the bot that is used for making generative AI foundational models of OpenAI smarter. This is not the bot that is used for search or for inference in real time by OpenAI. This is the bot that they use for creating better model, and it's starting to process knowledge graphs. Knowledge graphs are published following linked data standards, so they are basically RDF triples out in the wild. Now, practically, what you can do is start thinking strategically about the content and the data that you are publishing, and start looking at this list that I provided in these two coming slides, because you will need to decide if you want to let crawlers access your website for real-time inference. So when someone goes on ChatGPT and make a request, if you want to enable your content and your data for the bots that are powering the internal search, so the crawling and the indexing, or if you want to let your content and data be used for model training. And so here I created a first list of the different crawlers, so that you can bring it home and look at your robot.txt file and start understanding if you're letting these guys get on your site and at what level. And so OpenAI, Anthropic, Perplexity, ByteDance, TikTok, Common Crawl, extremely fundamental for all the model training. If you're letting Common Crawl access your site, it's most probable that these systems will be trained with your content. Sorry. Amazon bot. This is sorry, extremely valuable for everything that has to do with Alexa, the new Alexa, and all Amazon LLM services. And here, of course, Meta. You've seen, of course, Meta contributing this open source model. Llama 4 was released just a few days ago. And then, of course, you have all the different Google crawler, and you can start to see the nuances, right? You can start to see that, well, maybe I don't want to let Google train their model on my content, or maybe I do want Google to train their model on some of my my data and my content. So we need to be very strategic in deciding what we are making available to these people, and we have to clearly understand the different nuances. We have to start thinking in terms of AI discovery. We have to start thinking in terms of AI agent becoming the new gatekeeper. We have to start thinking in terms of slow search. That means that there's not going to be one query. There's not going to be a user intent that you can target, and then a few queries from that user intent, because there are going to be multiple queries that are triggered at the speed of light by a reasoning model that takes complex decision on behalf of the user. And that means that we have to produce a lot more content in a way. We also want this content to be on our websites, right? We don't want, for example, content related to our brand, our products, or service to be hosted by someone else. We want firsthand this agent to be fed by the content on our website. We want to make it as accessible as possible to them. Some of these systems in real time, when they run an inference, when someone, for example, make a query on Perplexity, they wouldn't have the time to process your fancy UX or even JavaScript. They will look for the most accessible source of content. That would be, for example, the markdown description of your website. We'll get into that later. We want to start thinking in terms of conversational searches. We want to start thinking in terms of, okay, what are the content pieces that I need? How can I create content that is long form and still, accessible, usable for agentic experience? And we've seen, something happening just a few days ago when ChatGPT announced that they made a new memory upgrade. And here you see a very interesting and elaborate presentation of what I do and why I should be attention by them and CIA for the type of work that I do on AI. And it was a disaster, right? They had to roll it back. and why it was a disaster? Because they weren't able to validate the model. They went live with the model, and even if internal experts say, hey, there is a cacophony problem here, they didn't care, right? They went live with the model. Luckily, the entire web exploded with comments and tests like the one I did before, and they had to roll it back, and they had to admit that it was a disaster. But why is interesting for us today? Because this failure exposed the importance of memory and custom instruction, because we could clearly see how these models are reacting now based on what you have been telling them in the past. Memory is starting to play a role. We are shaping AI behavior. And so every interaction that we have with this model, it's creating a training signal for the next model. And of course, there's hyper personalization already. So it's very hard to say, hey, am I appearing on an LLM? And now there is a plethora of tools, and we're also investigating on different approaches to, of course, monitor the presence of a brand. And I'll show you a few examples of the direction that we're taking. But reality is that memory and custom instruction are making the difference. Because we're not just training, LLMs, we're teaching future AI agents, which are way more complex systems than just LLM, how to think about us, right? And we do this with the data. We do this with the semantic content. Why? Because basically, if memory is strategic in marketing, well, we have to understand what is memory, what type of memory exists, right? And there are really three types of memories that we can use when creating an AI system. Semantic memory, okay? Everything that has to do with facts. Imagine the catalog of your products feeding into Google Merchant Center becomes the memory layer of Gemini in order to understand if that product is a fit for that user. Episodic memory. This is, the what has happened, the history. A clear example here, it's the use of social media. I made a test. I went to speak to an AI conference, and I was with my my partner and friend David, and we decided to make this experiment. We started to tweet like crazy about my talk at the AI festival, and even though there were over 200 speakers, guess what? When we went and asked Grok X AI, what were the top speaker, even though, yes, I did a decent talk, but I mean, there were speakers way more famous than me, Grok mentioned immediately in my talk. Reason was that we built an episodic memory by contributing to social. And that's going to work like charm with this system today. I mean, it's like SEO 2006, right? You can write a bunch of content, optimize for passage ranking, optimize for embeddings, and we'll get into that in a little bit. and you get it to rank. And you can shape the episodic memory of the system, because the system will use social in order to understand what has happened. Procedural memory. How do I do certain things? How do I create this recipe? How do I make pizza? Step-by-step instructions, structure, organized in semantic data. These are function of a good response. So we have to create memory in order to build, influence. So if before we were optimizing for human intent and search behavior, today we are programming memory layers. And we do that by structuring content semantically. Today we're looking at AI agent becoming, the primary gatekeepers. Here you see an example of how this works. So we optimize the product highlights, which is a feature inside Google Shopping Graph. Google has a vast memory about products, like billions of products. We are using AI in a knowledge graph to scale how we describe this product using product highlights. We feed these back into the shopping graph, and we generate, increased visibility on AI overview, conversational query, and traditional search. And we can optimize advertising spending. We are acting on memory. We have to understand how memory is built for that specific target. We want to look at what Tony Seal, who is with me in New York these days, described as the ontological core. Because like every organization, we want to make a difference. Your content is not going to make a difference. I'm sorry, no longer, because it's going to be hyper-personalized. And so when I come, my memory, my needs, my custom instruction are going to create content, and it's going to be different from the content that's going to be generated when Scott arrives. So what is left? What is left is your ontological core. That means that we have to start looking at the goals of the organization. We want to start looking at, what is foundational in the organization. We want to look at what makes the organization authentic and real and different. And we want to model it. We want to model it. And these are the building blocks. You want to start from the core entities. You want to start from the expert questions that you want this model to answer, just like I did when creating our reasoning model from an ontology. You want to look at the entities. You want to look at the expert questions that you want to be able to answer. You want to look at the business concept. You want to look at the products and services. You want to look at the customer segments, the personas. We're modeling personas inside knowledge graphs. Why? Because content is dynamic. We want to build the processes for creating content, and we want to create existing vocabularies for expanding our ontologies. We want to go beyond schema.org. We want to go beyond GS1. We want to create our own ontologies and custom extension if needed. We want to map to whatever is there that the models have learned, but we want to also teach the model something new. And we want to focus on journeys. So we want to look at the relationship within the entities that will drive the customer journeys. We're not just looking at the hierarchical connection between the different concepts, but we also want to understand, hey, a user will start with these needs, and then we saw that it goes in this other area of expertise, and then we need to cover this and that. And we want to do this with cross-references. We want to build graphs. We want to build semantic relationship, because this is foundation for the AI system. It's foundation for building better AI for the world. Now, once we are creating these graphs, how do we make them accessible, to these AI agent? How does the agentic experience can benefit from this, data structuring work? I proved you that, GPT bot is coming not only to the content, not only to the structured data, but it's coming also for the knowledge graph. It's coming also for RDF triples. We saw also this week OpenAI announcing their own new shopping experience. Guess what? What does the shopping experience of OpenAI uses? It uses structured data. Wow. We expected that, but now we have a proof. Now we know. Because an AI consumption layer, an agent, the agentic experience need structured data. Now, we can expose this data in different forms. I have created a free application for you to generate today your LLMS.txt file. This is a clean, AI-friendly, markdown overview of the top section of your website. Super easy, but it tells, a language model that is accessing your site at inference time, a world of things. It tells them what is relevant and how to get further information. It guides, these bots. We are about to launch a model context protocol. Now, imagine MCP as the HTTP for AI agent, a protocol that allows an agent to understand, for example, what's in stock. What do you have inside your catalog? How can I make a query to your search? How can I interrogate using GraphQL, your knowledge graph? What is available for my user back there? Remember, we want to accelerate the speed at which AI bring us the good clients. So we want to be real. We want to be authentic. We want to make data accessible to these systems in different ways. So we want to invest on interoperability and standards. So LLMS.txt, this is the web application that you can use for immediately giving the URL of your website, generating this text file, that in a way acts as a robot.txt for AI system. You can place this file once it's generated into the root of your server. You can regenerate it when needed. It is a simplified version of what's available. It doesn't have any complex HTML. Is in fact written in a clear markdown format, and it's very concise overview of what is available. Model context protocol. We are about to launch support for MCP on our knowledge graph, and many others are. This is a standard that started a few months ago with Claude, that now is being embraced by both Gemini, Google, and OpenAI, and a plethora of other AI companies. That means that we are building a protocol, much like we did in the past with HTTP, to make this intelligent system share information over the wire. And if you want to improve the agentic experience, you want to start venturing into these fields, and you can only do that if your content is structured, if your data is semantically relevant. There's no way that you can make data available through an MCP endpoint if it's not structured, if it's not organized. You need to teach the agent how to make a proper query. But how do you make a proper query if the content is not structured? We want to start looking at how to monitor the impact on these models, right? And I've been very skeptical, I have to say, about the different tooling that are appearing around, that are taking on the challenge of measuring how much a brand is visible on ChatGPT. And of course you can easily understand the reasons. I mean, the system are stochastic, so every time they will give you a different response. And the system are augmented by the open web and search. So if you are not letting, for example, your content be indexed by a crawler, good luck. There's no way. And in any case, we start to see that they are not tapping on the top ranking results. They are looking at a broader range of results when they use, web index. So how can I really help you understand, how visible is your brand? So I started to look at Sparse autoencoders. These are very simple transformer-based model that can be trained on open source language model like DeepSeek or Gemma, or the upcoming open source model of OpenAI. So what does a sparse autoencoder do? Well, it would read the mind of a language model when a sequence is sent. It would look at the activation layers, the neurons that activates when I mention WordLift, for example. I mention my brand. And quite interesting, if I train an autoencoders on top of Google Gemma family of models, guess what? It triggers two neurons. It triggers one neuron for SEO and 1 neuron for RDF graphs. This is the standard that we use for building knowledge graph. Well done, WorldLift. I mean, we have been able to get into the brain of these models and we can validate, we can look at it. And of course, if that doesn't happen, we can review our strategy and create the content that is needed in order for the model to be trained and to remember us for a few things. Practical, you can also use a meta prompt. Let me explain you. You can go to ChatGPT and you can say, give me all the queries that you would use for providing in the answer a mention to my brand. So this is a meta prompt. This is a way in which you could simulate, what type of queries the model think would give your brand as one of the answers. These are tactics. I mean, there's nothing strategic about tactics. What is strategic here is that you have to focus on your ontological core. And then you have to develop the infrastructure for building AI at scale, because that's what's going to preserve the relationship between your content, your data, and your customers. And so it is time to wrap it up and maybe take some questions. So point number one, AI agents are becoming the new gatekeepers. Search is becoming a function of AI. And it's combining, traditional system one thinking, pattern matching with deliberate reasoning. We have to create the data for reasoning system to evolve, and we have to provide the data that we care the most. I show you, I was able to create a reasoning model using an ontology that represents, the way in which we do SEO, the way in which we think. We can train this model not only to learn patterns like we do now, but we can train them to think, how we want them to think. And we can start using them in the organization if we are able to shape their way of thinking. In order to do that, we have to focus on the ontological core, because we have to think in terms of creating memory, creating a memory layer, a persistent layer of understanding. This is helpful for creating a better AI inside the organization, but it's also extremely relevant for creating AI, for influencing AI outside the organization, for creating, relevant and authentic content on social network, on our website, on third parties. And, we cannot just focus on a single channel. We have to embrace, multiple channels. We have to start looking at, traffic coming from DuckDuckGo. We have to start looking at, what level of engagement we can create on LinkedIn. But guess what? Even when I publish an article on LinkedIn, I have to remain true with my audience. I have to remain valuable for my audience, and I want to be consistent. So we want to think of marketing in terms of memory creation, and we can start then embrace different techniques. We're going to use knowledge graph. We're going to use structured content. We're going to start using LLMs TXT. We're going to start using model context product, and more will come, I'm sure. But if you have good data, you can do great marketing. And that's all for you today, and I'm happy to take questions.
Excellent. The first question, I'm going to jump right in because we hardly have any time left. Michelle wants to know, do you have any advice for writers who are readying internal developer documentation for behind the firewall AI agent searches? Think intranet, Michelle says.
So what is valid for the internet, it is also valid for the internet even more, right? So if you're writing technical documentation, don't write it for human only. Start thinking in terms of agentic experience. Start creating LLMs TXT and LLMs full TXT files. These are a way in which you are extracting, an agent to learn how to use your product, how to use the APIs or the solution that you're offering. And it's equally important for the outside world and the internet world. It's just the same, As an AI practitioner, I need Markdown to train my models. I need structured data to train my models. I need ontologies. Make it available for me. You are bigger as a writer than you used to be before, because now you are building the strategy. You're not just building content. You're building the strategy for teaching the AI what to do.
Perfect. Lindsay would like to know, do you find that optimization for AI impedes readability for human users? And if so, How do you optimize for both audiences?
Great question. Yes, content that is optimized for AI, it's overly verbose. As we learned from the so-called generative engine optimization paper that came out a while ago, AI system would prefer highly dense content with a lot of statistics, quotes. I mean, it's a phase in which, yes, we can't reach both targets. You know, you want to write something beautiful for your human audience, you might not need so many quotes. You might not need all of these data. I mean, factual data is good also for human readers, but I do agree with you that readability might suffer. So what are we doing right now is that we're first starting to create a markdown version of the content, and we're starting to create, you know, these additional entry points where, you know, the system can see the complexity behind the piece of content that the reader might not see. In the end, let's think differently. You are creating highly dense informative content. The interface is going to be an AI that's going to read your highly complex content and is going to dilute it and personalize it for the end user. So unless you're specifically speaking for the human readers, I would suggest that you optimize for AI and then let the AI do the work of making things simpler.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Fergal has a question. What can or should be done to optimize legacy content for generative AI search?
So one very practical techniques that we use a lot is to turn it into question and answers, and then to extensively refine this question and answer to make sure that there are no duplicates, that the answer resonates with the brand core values, that you're again kind of distilling the core of your organization. So getting content, making sure that there is value still in this content, because, you know, truth to be told, a lot of the content that we have online, it's outdated. There's no need to keep it on the internet, as we were discussing with Scott. There is also a great advantage for the environment if we start pruning our content and remove you know, the clutter that is no longer needed. Now, for the content that is still needed, but it's you know, outdated in terms of format, I would suggest to convert it into Q&A blocks, and then refine these Q&A blocks, and then start from there, you know, kind of rejuvenating the content.
And doing so is because I'm telling the system, I'm teaching the system, this is a question, this is an answer from a reliable source. I'm the source, you can verify that, et cetera, which is different than inferring from the data, right? We're telling it specifically the answer to the question.
Yes, it's also very tactical, because again, we are optimizing for passage ranking. That means that we're actually optimizing for short sentences, very similar to the answer to a question. And so if we want, you know, to teach the AI, we have to kind of compile it in the way in which a conversation would work.
Last question. We have more questions than we can answer, so I'll send them to you later so we can write a blog post and try to answer some of these later. Plus, they may help you do presentations in the future. Okay, so the last question is, do you have any specific recommendations for how content should be tagged or organized to achieve this?
Oh, yeah, of course. So we use entities. We use schema as a bare bone of the content classification. If you are aware of, you know, the SEO industry, there's been a very long and somehow helpful, somehow useless debate about the importance of schema for search engine. Now, schema is foundational for organizing your content, because in order for you to create you know, content that it's footer proof, you need to turn it into data. And so you can use an ontology like schema and mix it up with other ontologies in order to structure it, classify it, and create value out of it that, you know, AI can extract.
And when you say schema, you're saying schema like a schema.org, schema.org?
Yeah. Primarily, I talk about schema.org, but again, structured content, you know, existing standards, they all work like charm, because they're all, in any case, providing structure that models need in order to be taught.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you. That's going to have to be the end of that for today. That was a lot of content in a short amount of time. Thank you. Audience members, please let us know what you thought about the quality of the information that was delivered today and the value that it provided you using our 1 through 5 star rating system, in which 1 is a low rating and 5 is an exceptional one. There's also a little field into which you can type some feedback. We share that with Andrea after the show is over. And speaking of the show, we hope that you'll join us again on October 5th through the 8th in Atlanta, Georgia for LavaCon. Not to belabor it, but you can learn more about LavaCon at lavacon.org, or of course you can Google it and you'll land there too. You can save 10% off the cost of registration if you use our discount code TCW, which stands for the Content Wrangler, whenever you're checking out. And also thanks to Hereto for being our sponsor. We appreciate it. You can learn more about Hereto and their component content management system and related tools on the web at hereto.com. You've been watching Optimizing Your Content for Generative AI Search with Andrea Volpini. Thanks for joining us today. As always, be safe, be well, keep doing great work, and we will see you on another episode of the Content Wrangler webinar series in the near future. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Andrea.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.